Hey guys, I'm Bigmoran. I haven't been here for a while, but I'm finally back. And today we're joined by Healingstat, who is the product manager at WoW Esports. He's a former caster for WoW Esports as well, and a two-time BlizzCon runner-up. And I don't know if it's a self-proclaimed or real chess master. So, Adrian, why don't you introduce yourself? Maybe there's something I missed.
Yeah, I don't know about self-proclaimed, but yeah, I'm Adrian, aka Healingstat in game. I used to be a competitor actually in the arenas. Still definitely partake. I was leveling my Death Knight yesterday in preparation for Wrath, uh, and the arenas that will come with that as well. But yeah, I am the product manager on WoW Esports at Blizzard. We work on a lot of stuff for PvE, PvP, and yeah, I appreciate the introduction going from casting, playing, to now working a little bit more behind the scenes. It's a lot of fun. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
It's our absolute pleasure. And you said you were just in a meeting right before this. That's why we're running a little late. Like, how many meetings do you have in a day about esports?
It depends day to day, but certainly right now, because we're in our show season, we just had our XCC raid event this past weekend, and prior to that, we had some Great Push Mythic Plus events.
Mm-hmm.
What typically happens is, we work the weekends, and then we'll comp a day sometime during the week, and then all the meetings kind of get condensed into that period. So I do apologize for, the slight delay to the start of today, but
That is
uh,
fine.
that's something that normally happens on the Tuesday, Wednesday, and then it starts to relax and we go into rehearsals and stuff for the rest of the week.
Nice. And hence that's why your voice is a little thrashed. How many meetings have you been in today? I'm just kind of curious.
Uh, you're gonna make me open Outlook and count. Probably somewhere in the region of six or so. It's not been too bad. There were just a
Oh,
lot of them in the afternoon.
still, to me that's a lot.
It is a lot of talking, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's a good thing that I come from a background of casting because talking is definitely a lot of what I have to do. So
There you
it's
go.
it's good practice.
All right. So when you're in a meeting, do you all of a sudden go into caster voice and be like,
Not very often. I try not to do that. At some
okay,
point, we have to bring back casting and do it as a thing again.
do
We'll
a
have
whole
to find a good
presentation as a
excuse.
caster?
Yeah, exactly.
Finish,
That would be good fun.
yeah, finish it off with
Just
down
pretend
goes
someone's the one
Benruki.
percent. Yeah, that I actually we finish all our meetings like that anyway. So we normally like to rotate. Like I'll say it once, and then someone else from the team will say it the next time. Make sure we got a good cyclical thing going there.
That's hilarious. Uh, but you don't end any meetings if you just head down bashing your keyboard to pieces, do you?
It depends how much people have annoyed me that day.
What really happens is on the seventh meeting of the day, Super Tees pops out and it says this will be a
Yeah,
final fitting resting place for the our
for the
last meeting of the
workday.
day.
Yep,
And then he
yep.
just leaves. He just
And we
gets
all
paid
have
to
ruins
do
of
that.
Lordron as our backdrops for that one as well. Yeah.
Oh,
Exactly.
I'm literally crying with tears. This is so funny. Oh boy. Well, I have to ask. Now that we know what you've done today, normally we talk about what we've been up to the last couple of weeks. First of all, to you, Adrian, though, what have you been up to in game? Just playing Wrath? Have you been, well, I guess pre-patch, or you've been playing retail? What you been up to?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of both. So definitely, I was playing season four quite a bit when it came out. Season three, I managed to get my Gladiator on one of the last days of the season, so I was very happy with that.
Nice.
Shout out to Absturge and Sivs, who are the two people I've been playing RPS with. This season, I've been gearing up my Shadow Priest again on retail, playing it a little bit more casually, especially over the last few weeks, just because we've had a lot work-wise to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then yesterday was my first kind of full day off in quite a while, and I devoted that to my delightful Tauren Death Knight on Wrath, who is called Beefy DK. Um, and I got him from 60 to 66. I'm hoping to finish him up to 70 at some point before the expansion comes out. Still haven't decided if I'm going to be playing Death Knight when it actually comes out. Probably going to play my priest mainly, but
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of having a Death Knight. It's very fun. So
Well, and that mount that got announced was,
the mount is so good. Yeah, I love
oh,
it.
yeah.
Even the Death Knight mount, just from being a Death Knight in Wrath,
Oh, yeah.
is super super cool. Like it just has like it's got that like eerie horse sound effect
Mm-hmm.
whenever you mount
Mm-hmm.
it, which is super cool. Very unique to other mounts. And then obviously,
Totally.
yeah, the one you get in mainline is super cool as well.
Yeah. No, I'd say the thematics behind the whole Death Knight and that experience as a character, everything just feeds into it so well.
Yep, I
Uh,
agree. I love it.
Me too. Big, how about you, buddy? What you haven't been
Yeah.
on for a while, man. You've been like
Yeah,
hiding in
I
the
haven't
closet
been.
somewhere. I don't know.
No, I've been making some Wrath of the Lich King content for the past 2 months, which has been very fun and quite challenging. But yeah, I haven't had that much time to play retail. I have been playing pre-patch. I did wind up boosting a mage, which is a bit
Ooh.
of a departure from my role as a healer. But
Mhm.
I tweeted this like my heart said play Rested Druid, but then I remembered Rested Druids don't have a magic dispel in Wrath, and being a healer without a magic dispel just feels really bad in my opinion. And so I was like, oh, maybe I'll play Priest. But then I was like, wait, I really like playing Mage. I'm just gonna play what I have the most fun with, and it's for me that's always been Mage. It's kind of been my like default like fun thing to play, Mage and Rogue. Um,
Mhm.
I'm an RMP fanboy, by the way. Don't tell anyone. But yeah, I've always enjoyed Mage, so I decided to boost a Mage. Been gearing through Alteric Valley, just like everyone else, and then I did do the Scourge invasion, which I got fairly lucky getting 3 of the 4 epic pieces. So my gear is still
Nice.
really bad, but it's not terrible. It's not completely awful. But yeah, having a really fun time. Really looking forward to Wrath for sure. Just the pace of the game is really exciting, and it's a different era of WoW. I wouldn't say necessarily better or worse. It's just different, and I really appreciate it.
Indeed. So I have to admit, I tried playing Wrath. I I know some people that were over on Benediction. So being a dad, I was able to get up earlier than normal gamer hours, and actually able to log on to there and did some leveling. I made it as far as Westfall. I made myself a human warlock named Gerissar in memory of the warlock that I originally had. And then I haven't been able to get on Benediction since. It's just been
It's been a bit tricky.
yeah. I think there's been more people that have been setting up their alarms, and honestly, people at work get a little upset when I'm playing World of Warcraft instead of doing work. So can't
Makes
do that
sense.
during. Yeah, I don't blame them. So doing that. So otherwise, I've been playing retail. Just been chunking away at getting the Keystone Mount Master to get the big old purple mount, purple and gold, because I want that. And otherwise, just I think I started leveling. I had a monk sitting at 50, so I decided to pull it into Shadowlands and start leveling it. Now I was doing it as Windwalker, but I'm not sure if I want to keep doing Windwalker or if I want to switch it up and try Mistweaving or Brewmaster on that, because Windwalker's fun, but I feel like that's like the normal that everybody levels up in, and I feel like tanking or healing might get me through dungeons a little bit faster and into the queues a bit faster. So still trying to figure that one out, but that's what I've been up to. And if anybody's wondering, Jake, he wanted to be here, but just he couldn't. Too busy IRL, so we'll have to catch up what he's been up to next time he's on the show. In the meantime, though, I think Big, you have the need, greed, and pass. Why don't we roll into that and hear what you have for us to pick this week?
This likely won't be a fight, so keep your distance, eh?
Alrighty. So as always, we have this little segment. I love doing this. So Big's going to pose a scenario with 3 options, and we get to each individually pick which one will need, greed, and pass. And also, as always, people live at chat, if you're listening live, hop on into this. And if you're listening from at home after the time, hop on over to our Discord. We'll have a thread over there where you can tell us what your need and greed and pass are. But Big, over to you, man. What's going on?
Yeah, so longtime listeners of the stream or people who might know me know that I really like Super Smash Bros. All right, and Super Smash Bros. Has an interesting esports scene, and I'm talking about Smash Melee. And one of the things that kind of helped grow the scene was a documentary that was made, I believe, in 2012, 2013, that featured kind of the storylines that helped build the community into what it was at the time. So it got me thinking, what if there is a WoW PvP documentary that was kind of like an accessory to WoW esports? You know, of course, that would involve interviewing a lot of players throughout WoW's history, but WoW has a very long esports history. And so, including the entire history in one single documentary might not be enough, and instead you might need to split it up into individual sections. So you could have a documentary on the old WoW esports. So I'm talking about, TBC, Wrath of Lich King era, and that would include interviewing players like Hydra, Nelio, Hafu, Azael, the old school, the old guard players. Then there's this kind of, this new era of WoW, which, depending on who you ask, might have started in Legion. And, we have some star players from that era like Waz, Maro, and Cubsy. And then you kind of have this transitionary period in between, right, from Kata to WoD, which might include players like Healingstat here. And so my question would be, if you wanted to watch a WoW PvP documentary, which era of WoW would you like to see? Would it be the old school era, again, TBC, Wrath of Lich King, or even Classic? The transitionary period, which would be Kata to Warlords of Draenor, or the new WoW period, sort of the modern day WoW esports, from Legion to Dragonflight. So one of those you have to need, one of those you have to greed, and one of those you have to pass. So a documentary on one of those eras.
Oh boy. You always come up with these really good, interesting scenarios. I love it when you're on, Big. How much, Adrian? Do you have any choices, or do you want me to go first?
I'm happy for you to go. I got some thoughts. This is a very interesting question for sure. It got me thinking immediately. So you go ahead, and I'll give my answers.
Okay. So my initial gut, my initial gut, like I immediately had a visceral, like I really want to watch, is that old WoW, the classic, bring in Hydra, Heifu, Azael, have them talking about all that time frame. Yeah, and especially now, like now that they're years older and looking back on what that was like, I think that would be an amazing storyline. And honestly, like truly, that is just like that first initial emotional response, and then thinking into it, I was like, but I really enjoyed that whole Kata to WoD time. Like that's when I feel like WoW esports really started to take off on itself, especially into the WoD with what happened with the transition in the WoW esports, even where it changed over to where we are today with the 4-person teams and stuff like that. So now I'm kind of stuck because I really want to see both of them. So since I have to need and greed and pass, I'm actually going to need on the transition period. I want to need that, and I'm going to greed on the old classic because that visceral emotional response, and just because I'm going to have to pass on the Legion Beyond. I feel like that documentary would just have a little bit too much dampening in it, that I don't think I would want to watch that.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's a really tricky question, and also I think one of the things that makes it such a fun question is that when you look at the players who are playing today in PvP, a lot of them are players that have played through some of those older periods.
Oh yeah.
And then a lot of them are these kind of newer players now. But the probably my instinct would be that I'd really like to have that old school content. I remember watching it when I was just getting into WoW, just getting into PvP back in 2008, 2010 sort of time. So maybe I would greed on that as an extension of needing on the current content. I think having like the mix of the the players who played from back then telling their stories versus like some of the newer, younger players coming in, especially with things like Dragonflight, right? Where it's like, it's new, it's shiny, there's going to be some exciting stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'd probably need on that one. And then I'd, not because I want to, but because I have to, I'd pass on the Ward Kata sort of period. Just because I
Okay.
think I would rather greed the older content, just because, I mean, we all have such good nostalgia of those times, right? Like, the
Oh, yeah.
game was super fun. PvP was just starting out. You had all these innovative, crazy plays from people because we were all much worse at the game back then, right? So I'd love to relive more of that.
Yeah. Back when if a person did a Shadow Word Death move,
Legendary.
yeah.
Yep.
Now if you miss that, you're a noob. It's all right. I love it. Okay, Big, since this one is yours, what would you do?
I would actually need the old WoW. I
Yeah.
think it was very, as we've just been talking about, it was a very interesting time. It felt very raw, right? It was just no one really knew what they were doing. It was very chaotic. Production value was maybe a bit questionable. But it had a lot of interesting storylines that I think a lot of players today might not know about. And so I think it'd be fun to kind of go back to see, how far we've come in the realm of WoW esports by just comparing it to, the oldest form of WoW esports. And then, as far as my greed is concerned, uh, I don't know, to be honest. I mean, I like the transitionary period. Probably that'd probably be what I would greed, to be honest. Just for sake of producing the documentary in a chronological order, right? And I think in that period too, I think there's a lot of players who, as Adrian said, kind of came through that time frame as well, and are still playing today. And I think those storylines are always really interesting, as are the rookies too, obviously. But I'm an old PvP veteran myself, so I have some bias towards the other old PvP veterans. So yeah, I think I'd definitely need on the old WoW and greed on the transitionary period. With, of course, the new WoW being not so far off. It's a tough one.
It kind of makes me wonder if a person had, like, I've been playing since vanilla, so I know I remember watching all this stuff happen throughout the years. Versus, I wonder if a person who has joined in, let's say, Legion, would be more leaning to watching that new WoW as their need rather than a transitionary or an old WoW, because they might be like, old WoW, who cares? I don't know. Be interesting. Well, like as always, like we said before, if you're in the car when you get to work, by all means, hop over to the Discord and let us know what you think. If you're in a safe space and you can, hop over to the Discord right now. Tell us what your need, greed, and pass is. In the meantime, we're going to run over to the subject of analysis and pick Adrian's brain on WoW Esports.
I'm gonna light you up, sweet cheeks.
All right. Apparently, I'm having a hard time talking all of a sudden. I'm just so nervous in front of Adrian. I don't know what it is.
It's a dry period. It's the summer. Gotta get the water. I say this is the case of do as I say as opposed to what I do. Because I definitely have not drank any water yet today either. I should.
You should. Don't you guys have like just bottles of water just sitting around to?
Yeah, I definitely. It's one of those things where, like, whenever I do it, I'm so happy I did it, but I just forget to do it. It's like not front of mind.
You need a week aura for.
Yeah, I actually, dude, real life week auras. I guess like I normally use like notifications on my phone or alarms and stuff like that as my real life week auras. But like if I just had something that popped up in front of my eyes of like, you haven't drank water in 2 hours, or you got to sit up because you're messing up your back, that'd be great.
Hey, like if they ever bring back Google Glass or whatever, that project that was supposed to be the new technology and never really popped up. I'd be down for some Google Glasses, some week auras, I'd be installing that instantly. Let me know my water intake on the fly, the heads up display. It'd be very useful.
I saw your picture on the podcast on the Twitch page, so I thought those were Google glasses, but maybe not.
So someday, eventually.
The 1970s Art Deco version.
Yeah, this is the retro skin.
Yeah, exactly. I will say, just talking about that if anybody feels like they play a video game, they're playing WoW a bit too much and they need it, I'm pretty sure Zaryu has his own UI that has your dailies where you can or it tells you to drink water or get up and stretch and do your dailies. So, but we're not here to talk about different UIs. We're here to talk about esports. Adrian, 2022. So you guys started off with quite the bang, announcing a full plethora of WoW Esports between AWC, MDI, and then we started off with the Cat, which was, I think, an amazing kickoff right at the very beginning. The little Burning Crusade arena is always fun to watch. So I have to ask, as the production manager for esports in the WoW Esports in total, how did that feel? How has 2022 felt for you so far?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I think it's actually quite it's quite hard for me to think back all the way to January, February, where we were making those announcements, because it just feels like we've done so much between like, how many months is that? What, like 8 months, 9 months, something like that. The seasons were a ton of fun. Obviously, when the season 3 dropped in game, we had the new dungeons coming out for MDI. We had Tazavesh, which had been in the game previously, but came out to Mythic Plus. So it was great to see the teams playing through that in MDI. It's always fun to see new maps, and obviously that's something exciting about Dragonflight when it comes around as well as the changes to PvP. I'm always a big fan of the cups in PvP, just because they feel so cutthroat to me. It's like double elimination. If you drop down to that lower bracket and you get a tough matchup, I get from the player perspective that might not feel as satisfying as Circuit, where you play against everyone. But from my perspective, as someone watching, I love watching some of those lower bracket runs. Like, I think we had, was it Cup 4, where we had Golden Guardians who had to do some incredible stuff to make it through. And like those are the sorts of moments that I really love the storytelling for on broadcast. So that was a lot of fun, obviously, rounding out and culminating Shadowlands. And then we knew internally that this kind of new, fun, experimental season 4 was going to happen in game. And for us on the esports team, we were like, there's a lot of different ways we can approach this, because it's going to be a experimental season in game. It's not going to be like a standard season 1, season 2, season 3. We could just run another AWC and MDI season. It might be a little bit tight, so maybe we could run shorter versions of them. Or we could kind of match the rhetoric of like what the in-game season is trying to do, right? Like, what would it look like if we do a series of one-off events and new formats and things like that? This might be the chance to try it, right? Because we have 2 expansions at the end of the year. We don't want to, we're not going to do a big tournament that overlaps with the exact launch day of an expansion, because everyone wants to just be playing the expansion that day, right? So we've thought, let's try some new stuff. And it's actually been really fun working on those projects, because you get to be very creative. Obviously, also hope that the audience has been enjoying them. But between the TGP, where we saw a world record plus, what was it, 37 in the end, I think was the highest we saw in Junkyard. That's the highest key ever done, which is absolutely unbelievable by these teams. And then we also had the raid event just now for charity, which was great to raise money for some good causes. The variety show, which was something completely different and very, very fun to work on, just because we have never really done anything like that in our team. And then obviously back to PvP again to round it out. The solo shuffle event coming up in a couple of weeks, which is probably one of my favorite features in the game right now. I love just, logging on, doing a solo shuffle is like my one activity, getting a bunch of honor, conquest. So that's also something I'm very excited to see how that plays out, because again, we've never done it before, right? So there's bound to be a bunch of learnings. There's a lot of creativity that we get to do on the back end. And then hopefully for the audience as well, it's a really fun show when it actually comes to production.
Nice. Yeah, you just listed off so much stuff. I think.
Yeah, it's hard, and I'm sure I missed some stuff too. It's like it's been a crazy year, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to remember in the MDI cup, the MDI cups, because in the middle of it there was the Legion time walking. I can't remember. Did we have Legion time walking dungeons there too?
We did Legion time walking dungeons. We did do them in the MDI season. I think we had one per cup weekend. But the first time we showed them off actually was the end of last year. We did 2 mini TGPs last year when we were kind of, experimenting with that format. And we knew we were onto something. Like we really liked the format, which is why we expanded it again this year. But the second season, I think, was where we had 2 Legion dungeons. And that was actually my favorite part of that was that the teams were wiping a lot, like it was really tricky for them because it reminds you of MDI of old, where like obviously the dungeon design was a little bit different, but also just the teams were less practiced because they hadn't been doing as many time walking dungeons as they had of the current content. So that made for some really fun broadcast optics.
So I have a question because you've obviously done a lot this year, a lot of different forms of content. What personally was your favorite as the product manager of all this stuff?
It's a really good question. There's a few different things. I guess it depends like for which reason they're my favorite. My favorite thing that we put out in terms of the production, I would have to say I really enjoyed the TGP show, just because it's something that even from my time at Blizzard back originally, when I took up the position I'm in right now, a very similar one, TGP was something that we kind of like took from concept to ideation to iterating on it, and then kind of see that come to fruition this year with like a full mini season, prize pool, all of that, and just the crazy level of gameplay there. For me, it was really nice. I was really happy with the show. I think the teams had a lot of fun participating in it, and that was a really great product that I personally, obviously I don't take the opinion of other people. Other people may have different experience with it, but for me personally, that was really fun to put out. In terms of like actually working on the back end, one of the most fun shows to put together has been Variety Show, because that was something where we just got to be as creative as we wanted to be. We knew we'd never done anything like this, so we were kind of setting the slate clean. What should the events be? What should the broadcast UI be? What should the administrative experience, like how many players should be playing? Like there's so many different aspects of that event that you have to problem solve, you have to be creative, and that made it a really fun project to work on as well. So I think those two definitely been highlights. Equally, you can look at the raid event that we just put out. One of the highlights of that one was that a lot of the time we give prize money to players, and that's obviously fantastic, and we love setting up the ecosystem for these players to participate in. But being able to give back to some good causes, utilizing the Warcraft franchise and IP and these players' great skill, I thought was really nice. It's not something that I've personally been involved in too much. We support some charity events in the community, and perhaps I've donated to some here and there, but that's different to being able to kind of put on a full broadcast with that as kind of the sole focus. So for different reasons, I like them in different ways. Maybe if we'd had this interview in 2 weeks' time, I would be saying the solo shuffle one as well, right? Like we don't know how that one's going to play out just yet, but probably a slightly convoluted answer for your question, but I don't know. They're all just really fun for different reasons in my mind.
I don't blame you. I mean, I think each event tickles a person in a different way. Just like, and like you said, you have the upside of not just being a viewer, but also being part of the on the back end there, the administrative, the backside of setting things up. Just out of curiosity, though, from all the events you've had, was there any lessons learned? Was there anything that you guys are looking at and going, we could probably tweak that or make that better, and that so we'll see an event similar, but in a with a different twist or something come next year, maybe?
Yeah, there's definitely, I think with new projects especially, there's a lot of learnings. For us, like when it comes to MDI and AWC, we're going to do format tweaks here and there, but the kind of like baseline of like the broadcast UI is probably going to be something similar to what we see, right? Like maybe we make some changes, level up things based on feedback or based on changes that we think are appropriate for a new expansion. But there's going to be some sort of template to what we think is a good kind of base, just like when you watch any other TV program or esports or regular sporting event. The new one-offs we've been doing, I definitely think there's been a lot of lessons, and the newer the event, the more lessons we have to take away. For example, I think Variety Show is the one where our kind of postmodern meetings were the lengthiest, just because we had things like, I mean, it was incredibly fun to watch, but because we had 300 plus people racing in the same zone at the same time, we broke some elements of the game during that, which we probably, we could have planned better around it on our side to avoid that. And for the people involved, the feedback was, this is really fun and this is awesome. But for us on the back end, we're like, yeah, I'm sure there's a way we could have done that doesn't have that outcome. So
Yeah.
there's things that we go away, take from that. I think the raid event this weekend as well, there's some learnings. That was the first time we've done an in-house raid event in quite a while. It was great to partner with the guilds, with Echo, with Liquid on that. But again, it was the first time we'd done it in quite a while. We encountered a couple of things that we could have made better. And also, to be honest, like one of the other things was that first raid, Castle Nathria on Saturday, they blasted that so fast. Like they were crazy good. So maybe we would have found another way of slowing them down in future, just so that we could see them progressing through it a little bit more for the audience, as opposed to just like in and out like that. The second raid, Sepulchre, was more kind of in line with like where we were hoping Castle Nathria would be.
Yeah.
Those
wipes were
thing,
fun
right?
to watch. I'm not gonna lie.
They were really fun. Yeah. I was who was it who had the heartbreaking like 0.2%? That was Liquid, right? I think they had a 0.2% wipe in the last checkpoint of Sepulchre, and I'm like, oh no, dude! I was so sad for them.
Was that Fragilon?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was also where they had their faded curse. So they,
Yes.
I don't remember which curse was it. Was it the one where they were first person, or was it the one where they were walking? I think it might have been the walking one.
I think they were RP walking, yeah.
Yeah, so they were walking, and it would have been really epic if they killed it that quickly with 6 people, I think it was, RP walking, and they were within a whisker, it was so close. But yeah, I mean, the newer the event type, the more work it is to put it together typically, right? Like, which makes sense just because you have to factor in more variables, and then obviously there's more lessons that are learned from those as well.
Of course.
So yeah, there's a lot of data for us to take away, a lot of things for us to take away going into planning for next year.
Of course. I have to ask, just because it comes up. In fact, actually, I remember seeing a tweet on it or something like that. But so for the MDI, I think that the first MDI, we're seeing a lot of class stacking. A lot of teams with this exact same classes. This time around, you guys had no spec stacking. So again, you could have 2 warlocks, but they both couldn't be destruction. Are we going to see the same thing in 2023, or are you guys going to revert that and allow class stacking again?
Yeah, so we actually we've tinkered with this specific rule quite a few times over the last couple of years. Of course, as you said, there was the point in time where we just had complete free for all. I have weekly calls with our team in China, and they called it the Green Sky, I believe, because it was Triple Hunter, a Mistweaver Monk, and then I don't remember what the other class was, but it was something like that. So that was their meme, because like on the top of the MDI UI, that's where you have the 5 health plates
Yeah.
for Team A and then for Team B.
Green.
Yeah, so it was just like a fire green, and that was their meme. I don't remember if it was blue or green. It might have been blue, but either way, I was like, okay, so that's what we're up against right now. And I think we kind of knee-jerked a little bit too far in our reaction the first time, and we did have complete class stacking prohibited, where it was like you can only play one Death Knight and one Moonkin, which didn't feel necessary, because if you're a player or you're a member of the audience and you know there's a Moonkin playing, that doesn't necessarily satiate your desire if you're a Guardian Druid player, right? And maybe the team had to pick Moonkin because it was super high value in that meta versus a Guardian Druid, which they would have liked to have picked, but they just didn't have the option under those rules. So they felt a little bit too restrictive. We updated it to spec stacking this year, or maybe it was actually the last season of last year, but recently in one of the last couple of seasons. And I think that's been in a good place. I wouldn't imagine us making it more restrictive from that, but I also don't think we're going to remove that, just because it's nice to see a variety of specs. It's nice for the players also to, I think you get more variety when, if there's one edge case spec that's super powerful, you're just going to see 3 of it. But if it's just one edge case spec that's super powerful, and then they have to also pick 2 other DPS, let's say, then you might see more flexibility on those DPS. But that's something we could change if we saw strong feedback about it, or if the game meta dictated that would be better for the tournament. But I'm pretty happy with where we're at on it right now.
Yeah, fair. And it makes sense. You're kind of stuck to what the devs do as well, such as capping AOE or uncapping AOE, and how that works in dungeons and stuff. So I guess it's hard, because there's the one side of what the viewership wants, not understanding some of that nuances, and then there's what you guys could do as for rules, but at the same time you don't want to make it so restrictive. So I get it.
And bouncing off that, I have a question. This might be, I don't know, if an elephant in the room, or I'm sure this is a routine question that has come up over the years for WoW Esports, but I know a lot of people have an idea that maybe a pick ban system in WoW might be good for WoW Esports in the PvP side, and I'm sure you guys have had a lot of internal discussions about that. Is there any particular reason? I mean, I have my own opinion on a ban system in PvP. I personally don't like it, but is there any particular reason why that has not been an official form of experimentation for WoW Esports? Class bans in a tournament setting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something we talk about a good amount. I actually, following this AWC season, had some break-off calls where I just talked to some of the competitors and was like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? Different ideas and brainstorming. Picks and bans specifically it's a tricky one, because in my mind, there's 2 kind of ends of a spectrum when it comes to like how we set up these tournaments for PvP. There's one which is like very close to the old school, where you've got a 3v3 team that's actually just a team of 3 players, right? And then you're very much dependent on what the players on that team can play. Like, if they can multi-class, they can multi-class. If they can't, they're going to be stuck to the one composition. And then you've got in the middle this 4-player roster, which has a little bit more flexibility. If a team's counter-comping you, you can have an additional player who comes in. There's a bit more flexibility also online logistically. If someone disconnects, can't play or whatever, you have that extra option there. And then picks and bans, in my mind, goes at the very opposite end of the schedule of like, you've got the 4 players again, but like some of those things that the 4-player roster originally was trying to solve in terms of accessibility start to become trickier again, because for the super established teams you've got at the top, they're gonna love picks and bans most likely, right? Like it kind of it could potentially make the meta a little bit more freeing, if depending on how you structure the picks and bans, right? Like if you do it per map, like some of the community tournaments have done, or if you do it across like an entire weekend where a certain spec is banned, there's lots of different ways of implementing it. But the biggest tricky point in my mind is that you got a new rookie team who's just played ladder. They're playing Demon Hunter DK or they're playing RMP, whatever their composition is, and they're seeing ladder success. And then for them, the next logical step is like, hey, there's this AWC Cup coming up. Let's sign up, let's see how we do. And some of our rookie teams, that's how they start, right? It's like they over time will become, more experienced and they'll pick up a fourth player because they have more eyes on them. But they'll start out with 3 players and they'll just give it, a good hard try, and maybe they'll do really well in the tournament. You never know. Like that's the great thing about these open sign-up competitions, right? And picks and bans just put such a big blocker there in my mind, because if you are that person who's just been playing that one ladder composition, and then whoever it is playing against you knows that you play Demon Hunter DK only, they're just going to ban one of your classes, right? And once that has happens, sure, you could play an alt class, or maybe you picked up a fourth friend somewhere along the line, but chances are you're just practiced at that one comp that you did well with. And I just think that's such a big barrier to overcome for like entry level into AWC, that it's really that alone is like, it would have to have a really big upside to overcome it in my mind.
That's actually a really good point, and not even just the new players, but even some of the more established teams. Like, can you imagine My Way if they couldn't play jungle?
Yep.
Like,
yep. Very true.
So that's a great question, Big. Thanks, man. I mean,
No worries.
I'm kind of wondering, because you prefaced that with you have your thoughts. What are your thoughts, Big? What was your thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, echoing off what Adrian said, right? I think it's slightly punishing to people who, well, it's overtly punishing to people who just practice one thing. And I think, if what tends to happen is, every single season there is a handful of meta comps, right? And it just so happens that some players become really, really good at those meta comps, right? And I think for them to enter a tournament, for 3 good players, upcoming players enter a tournament and having all of their their practice kind of be dismissed because of a ruling which prevents them from playing their main comp, I think that might feel a bit unfair. I think the particular point of tension, and this has just kind of been a symptom of, I guess, PvP balance over recent years, is that I think there tends to be this problem with healer balance, typically, with the highest end of PvP, where typically the professional WoW esports healers will tend to gravitate towards whatever healer is best, which I think can feel a bit I don't know. I don't want to say exhausting, but in some ways it can feel exhausting, I guess, as a viewer to see the same healer represented over and over and over. I think healer balance is specifically where it becomes an issue. Again, I don't know if a pick ban system would be the solution to that, but I think if there is a starting point to that discussion, it would be based around healers. But again, like, it would be slightly unfair to people. Well, it'd be completely unfair to people who just are up and comers who've practiced one comp exclusively, and I think it'd be disproportionately punishing to those players. So yeah, I understand the arguments that people tend to put forth, right? And I think that the main problem is healer balance typically. And yeah, I think if there were to be a ruling, I think that's where it would have to start.
All right. I love it. I Actually, I'm going to steal this from chat, but it's also something I was thinking of, is rather than a class ban or a spec ban or even a comp ban, what about like just disallowing maps? Because there are some maps that are more advantageous to certain comps. Case in point, like Wizard Cleave and Tolvaron or something like that. Would that be something that would be? I guess in a way, I'm kind of concerned though, because the map pool is kind of small as it is. Or I
Yeah,
don't know.
maps are an interesting one, and actually we're going to do some tinkering with the way we do maps for this upcoming solo shuffle event. It's not going to be the full map pool. We're just going to have a select set of those, which is something that as we're inviting the players right now, we're sharing with them the rule set as we update it. So make sure they have even information there. But maps is something we've actually looked at a couple of times this year to tinker with. For example, we had the new Enigma Arena, and prior to that, Maldraxxus Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
And we did look at, you know, if these maps are relatively kind of balanced in terms of shape and size, like, is there a version of, Nagrand isn't the first map, right? And we start with a different map. So we polled players on that. We talked to them about it. And that was something that we did look at quite seriously for a while. In a similar vein, looking at some other esports formats where they have map pools for a certain series, and then teams can ban 2 maps, let's say, and then they play out the other ones, which is similar to what we do in MDI now. There could be a version of this for Arena in future where, right now you kind of know where we're going, and it's almost a meme with the talent of like, big, the caster's lost, we're going to Tolvaron, or the melee's lost, we're going to Ruins of Lordaeron. We probably could do a little bit more tinkering of like, let's just have 8 maps in the pool for this series. Teams get to ban 2 each or something like that, Definitely open to it. It's something that when it comes to that sort of stuff, we normally lean quite heavily on what the player and community feedback is, because at the end of the day, like, we want the players to have a good experience, the audience to have a good experience. But yeah, definitely open to that as a conversation point.
Cool. All right. I have to ask this one, just because again, you always see this, the money, right? There's always the talks about the money. So and it really, I had to say it. So 2002 actually was an increase in prize pools, but it actually looks less overall, because in 2021 there you actually had the 2 seasons versus this year we only had the 1 season. I'm just kind of curious if you can. Are we going to see another increase in 2023? Are we going to see more seasons and therefore a larger overall prize pool? Or what's 2023 looking like for us, Adrian?
Yeah, it's a good question. We're still working every day on what 2023 looks like right now. So that's actually, now that we're starting to wrap up a lot of our season 4 projects, that's quickly becoming, the main focus. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier in the show, a lot of the learnings that we've gained this year come now in the point of data, and some of this comes from me, but normally it's coming from people a lot smarter than myself that go in, analyze like the actual numbers that we've seen from various different aspects, right? Whether that be player surveys, how the viewers are responding to the shows, etc. And then we kind of put all that together, set out priorities for like what we think would be the best 2023 for the product, right? Thinking of the product at large as like, all of WoW Esports, and then the different components of that being AWC, MDI, Classic, and anything else we decide to do, right? So we're still pretty early in that process. We have some good ideas of like what it's going to look like, of course, since we try and keep levels of consistency for the players. When it comes to pricing specifically, that's something also that we probably have to wait until we're a little bit closer to announcing everything to know exactly where all the allocations are going to be for next year. I would probably, without saying anything that would get me in trouble, anticipate that the yearly kind of outlook for players should be roughly similar year over year. So this year we had, the bigger bump to circuit, and this was more because we wanted to make sure that, the players who are competing in AWC each year should at least have kind of like a consistent something to strive for, even though we don't have time to do 2 full AWC seasons this year. And obviously, we also have a bigger bucket for this upcoming one-off, which is something that's actually quite nice for players, because one of the big things with AWC specifically is that the prize pool, you earn it as a team.
Mhm.
But when you're competing in solo shuffle, if you win the solo shuffle, that money's all yours, right? Like you win it for yourself. So having a larger kind of sum for that one weekend input, I think is something that's going to be a nice win for the players who, obviously participate in that one as well.
So with the solo shuffle though, that's an invitational only, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
how did you guys figure out who to invite?
So we took a combination of 3 factors when it came to invites for the event. The first one was we wanted to make sure that we're inviting some of the people who perform the best in AWC during the year. Like they're the ones who made it to the top of the rankings. They played the full year out. So we sent invites out to the majority of players suddenly from the finals, and then also extending into the circuit. We also wanted to make sure we have avenues for kind of players that haven't necessarily shown their stuff in esports tournaments in the past, but have really been putting the effort in on the live ladder. So we made sure we had an allocation for people at the very top of the ladder for season 4, of which some of those invites have gone out to. That one's been a little bit more tricky, and that's actually part of the reason we decided to do this as an invitation rather than a qualification, is because we don't have ranked solo shuffle out yet. And also, again, this is our first event of this type. So similar to the raid event we just ran this past weekend, it introduces less variables when we decide to invite players than when we kind of open it up to everyone. But certainly the goal when it comes to solo shuffle events in future, subject to how this one does, of course, would be that we would try and find an avenue to open them up so that it can be open signups, just similar to AWC and TGP and MDI and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the invitations, AWC was a big factor. Live ladder performance, we wanted to be inviting people who are really putting the effort in and doing great on live ladder, give them that opportunity to kind of avenue into the esports scene. And then we did have a couple of extra spots that we allocated to, some of the bigger members of the PvP community as well, just so that we can kind of have an all-encompassing list of folks for this weekend. And I think we're just finishing locking down the full list this week, and hopefully we'll have that ready to announce next week ahead of the event.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We definitely had to spend a lot of time thinking about that, because we knew as soon as we made it invitational, we're gonna have to be very thoughtful about how we invite people, because you want to make sure if you're not doing open signups that you have a good representation of people from different avenues of the game.
I just out of curiosity, are you familiar with the Summit series that I guess is with a few other esports? Like Smash is one of them, and I think some other. Yeah, because I think the Summit series usually has invites, but then there's also a community voting portion of it. Is that an idea you guys discussed at all with voting members of the community into the tournament?
Yeah, so we did actually think about this as well. Not specifically in that form, but we were thinking of having hundred of players through the lobbies. Which the reason that this is important is because since we don't have a ranked system for solo shuffle just yet, we're going to be seeding each other lobbies randomly. And if you have, people that are of different kind of experience levels and stuff like that in those lobbies, then it could really skew the results in some of those earlier rounds for the players. So that kind of limited what our options were when it came to who we want to invite, because we know we need that kind of consistency through the bracket in both regions. Like I said, though, I think for a first time out, this is the way we wanted to do it. In future, I really like the idea that any tournaments that we do like this, and this is always something we strive for, should be open for participation as best as possible. And going back to, why I like AWC Cup so much, a part of it is that broadcast experience of, there's people on the upper side of the bracket who are doing great. There's those lower bracket stories. It's very, you have to perform every single game or you're out sort of thing. But the other side of that is those newer stories, right? Of like someone who comes from the ladder, they just play in the tournament. Maybe you haven't heard about them if you're an AWC fan before, but oh boy, they blow your socks off. They're crazy good and they do really well that weekend, And the fact that we have open signups each weekend enables those things to happen. It enables those players to play. And when it comes to, we already have some ideas internally of how we could achieve this. Once there's a ranked system for solo shuffle, it would be great to be able to include more people from the ladder in a more seasonal cadence and let them participate in those sorts of one-off events as well.
Yeah, I definitely see the solo shuffle as being an ability even in the community to do small community lands or online lands, because often like you even see it on the sign up where over at game battles you'll see about 30 teams signed up, but only 20 of them are actually full, and a number of them are disqualified because they're only 2 out of 3 people. Right? They just weren't able to get the people together. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
It's also, it kind of takes you a little bit back to, without getting too far ahead of ourselves, because obviously we want to see this first solo shuffle event. It's going to be super fun. A plug. Don't forget to watch it in a couple of weekends' time. But the looking at the future of how this stuff works, like I think AWC for sure, the team-based competition is the pinnacle of skill. Like it has that teamwork element, the communication element. But I do think as a more grassroots approach into PvP and into PvP tournaments, solo shuffle offers a great avenue there. So I do want to try find a way, maybe it's a tournament realm where it's like kind of similar to arena tournament-esque sort of thing, or maybe it's something where we're pulling people from the ladder ranked wise. I do want to find a way that people can, off of their own merit outside of AWC, get into this tournament, have fun with it. And that's something I would love to set up more for next year.
Nice. Sorry, I was just reading a very, very nice note put into the Twitch chat about you. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, you were talking. I just want to flip. You mentioned this, and it kind of popped in my brain. You're like, "Hey, we can watch the solo shuffle." Where's the solo shuffle going to be seen? Is it going to be only on YouTube like everything else, or because I've been noticing you guys have been cross streaming lately? What's going on there?
Yeah. Some of the so when it comes to exclusivity, we still have that for the main AWC and MDI products, since those are part of the exclusivity we have with YouTube. But actually, for a lot of these kind of one-off products that we have outside, they are, co-streamed on multiple platforms. So the Solo Shuffle Showdown is going to be not this weekend, but the weekend after. I really should have come prepared with what the numbers of those dates are. Let's see.
23rd to the 25th.
23rd to the 25th. Thank you very much. So 23rd to the 25th of September, MVP, technically PvP, coming in with that. So that's going to be live on YouTube. It's going to be live on Twitch. So both the Warcraft channels. But also one of the greatest things about this, especially since it's solo participation, is the players will be able to stream their perspectives. So, if you've got a favorite, once we announce those players next week, that you want to watch the perspective of maybe a rogue player or a healer player, you will be perfectly free to do that. And if anything, if they're saying they're not going to stream it, I'd have you don't harass them, of course, but lightly nudge them like, hey, it would be awesome to see your perspective during this weekend, even if it's muted or, on delay or whatever. Don't want to hurt their competitive chances, but I have absolutely loved during TGP, we had some teams streaming their perspectives. Obviously, by the time we got to the finals, it was there's a lot of money on the line and a lot of pressure. So I totally understand why teams might not want to stream their perspective. But at the same time, the viewer in me loves seeing that. And I want, going into next year, assuming we can still have this arrangement on our one-offs, I want to find more ways to kind of encourage players to do that, because I think it's beneficial for the community to be able to see that. You want to be able to see someone of your class playing it the best possible from their perspective. And it's also beneficial to the person in question, right? Like, they get to show the pinnacle of their gameplay on their own channels and have people tuning in, getting familiar with them. We get to promote them. I think that's a lot of like what we want to do from the community side when it comes to esports for a while. So very excited about that. And yeah, definitely, if you're watching, keep an eye out for who's streaming, because that'll be super fun to see the perspectives.
Yeah. No, I love seeing watching the perspective from the team doing the MDI. I'd love to see that for AWC. But I don't know. I find on the AWC it's almost a struggle for you guys just to get that one player cam for the team, let alone a team actually willing to stream their competitive edge in the middle of arena. I don't know. I'd love to see it though. I'd love to.
Yeah, it's definitely. This is something I completely sympathize with players' position on, because there are some players who just they say I play worse on camera, and I get it. I do think that there might be some sort of avenue there, though. Like, if we can have players stream their perspectives, which obviously is something we work toward. This is not an announcement or anything like that. When we are able to kind of have those situations, it is a little bit different, because if they just have their perspective on stream, maybe they don't need their camera, right? Maybe they can stream with some delay. There's workarounds for some of those things. So it's something we continue to monitor, because obviously there's a lot of things in the space where it's like you want to make sure you're managing the tournament integrity as a number one priority, because at the end of the day, you're trying to find the best arena player in the world, or the best arena team in the world, or the best dungeon team in the world, right? Like, that's the whole kind of principle that any of these esports tournaments, especially the main products, the MDI and the AWC, are built on. So you can't compromise that. But obviously a second goal there as well is, how can we make the best viewer experience, and player cams add to that, different compositions that the teams are running add to that. So it's, we're constantly talking about that in terms of like our rule sets, our incentives, how can we make it the best experience for everyone in the community, right?
I have a question, kind of based loosely on what you just said. I know, from my understanding, back in the day, back in the good old days when we had LAN events before something happened in 2020. I don't know what happened, but apparently LAN stopped, right? But from my understanding, yeah, back in the day, the fourth player on the roster was never able to interact with their team on stage, right? So they had to completely take off their headset, from my understanding, and they're not allowed to talk to their team. From my understanding now, the fourth player on each roster can interact with their team live, during the tournament. And now there's the ability to inspect with the plugin, what sort of gear the enemy team is wearing, and what sort of talents, what build they're playing. And I know that factors into a lot of decision making and a lot of communication that happens within the teams during the tournament. I'm just wondering, I'm sure that discrepancy is recognized by Blizzard, but why hasn't there been a sort of regulation on the fourth player in AWC specifically, in terms of feeding their team information live on broadcast, because I think that's a huge discrepancy between, you know, online broadcasts and LAN.
Hmm. Yeah, typically like when we did the online shows, even back when 2019 sort of timeline, we did enable the players to have a little bit more freedom when it came to those sorts of things. And to be honest, one of the biggest reasons for that is the logistics of it, right? Like it's a lot harder to police all of these things in a remote setting than it is in a live environment. So I think that's the main answer when it comes to the fourth player's involvement. And also, to be honest, like when you have a 4-person team and a 4-person roster, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that the 4 people can interact with each other and help each other to play, as long as everyone's on an even playing field to that end. I think that's okay. And these days you see in AWC circuit, the majority of teams that do make it there are playing with that 4-player roster. Of course, if we did make a change there where it became 3-person rosters, or if that's something we're experimenting with, we've been doing it during the classic tournaments, for example, then that becomes a different story. But that is something that I don't necessarily see as a direct problem. And we haven't really seen too much feedback about that from players, as long as they're all kind of in that same playing field and that gets the best experience, then in my mind, that's okay. The inspect tool is another question. So on our broadcasts, we do make sure to have a small delay, nothing that kind of takes it out of the live experience for the viewers, but enough that you can't see, information that would be revealed to the other team before the gates open. For example, like if someone could snipe where a rogue is sitting in stealth, that would be disastrous for competitive integrity, right? That would be super bad. And the inspect tool also does have a little bit of a delay on it updating, but uh, I'll take a look and make sure that that delay is enough. To my knowledge, I think it's enough that the gates open before it updates, so you can't make any like last minute changes between the two teams. But I'll double check that.
Yeah, I think I uh, I don't know where I heard this, but I think it came into play specifically when Team of the Hunter switched from Feign Death Legendary, Craven Stratagem, to Damage Legendary prior to the inclusion of double legendaries in Arena, and I think that might have impacted the series at in some way or another, right? Because playing with a defensive legendary versus an offensive legendary is a pretty big discrepancy. So I was just curious, and I guess piggybacking off that a little bit. I mean, has there ever been any sort of discussion about coaches allowed in WoW Esports? And I know that's been talked about in the past. If we do have a 4th player on the roster, what's the sort of limitation from having a 5th slot for a coach?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's also one that's been fairly topical on the MDI side as well. Because we've seen some teams kind of having unofficial extra members helping them with their preparations and practice time and stuff like that. I'm still fairly strongly of the opinion that that the size of the rosters right now feels either correct, or I would be going the other direction of like moving down to 3 people. And I have a few reasons for thinking this, but my main one is that with the scope of like what we have in terms of the tournaments right now, the pricing and everything, every single person that you add on top of that kind of like is it's going to be an extra thing that you have to account for, both in online and live tournaments, right? So I think having the 4-people roster for now feels like the correct number. It gives you the flexibility that 4th person, when they're outside of game, can assist you, whether it be like taking that kind of quasi coach role, or like helping you in the game, or subbing in as necessary for compositions during the actual tournament, right? You get a lot of flexibility with that. And then also in the worst case scenario, if you have a person disconnect or something, then you can have that 4th person come in, play the game. So it's nice to have that flexibility there. But I don't think, at least in my mind, increasing it up to a 5th official member of the roster would be the correct choice for AWC.
I guess arguably, I think it makes sense if people could officially put a coach onto their roster and recognize that that person would be compensated accordingly. Otherwise, you're stuck with whether or not, if you have an organization that is willing to pay a coach to assist. If you don't have that organization, you're actually behind a team that has an organization behind them that has that unofficial coach and everything. And no offense, Adrian, I would counter that the prize pools as they are and being split up amongst 3 or 4 players, while I'm sure the players enjoy getting that money, my understanding is from the player point of view that it's not exactly a living wage from the earnings that they're getting from the cups. So I'm sure splitting it up a little bit further to one more player probably wouldn't be detrimental to whether or not they do that or not. But I don't know. That's a little bit dissenting voice there, I guess. But necessary.
Yeah, and when it comes to these sorts of things, like the players are going to be the main stakeholder for us,
Of
right?
course.
Like if players have a strong, like if there was a really strong desire in the community right now for coaches in AWC, then it's something that we would definitely take on board, talk about, and figure out, what logistically would that look like, which isn't something we've seen too much. That second point you brought up as well is definitely a valid one of, if we saw certain teams benefiting from this in a way, and then other teams weren't able to, that's something that we also have to take on board, because when it comes to, realistically, in the environment we're in, some teams are going to, have more access to resources than other teams. So we actually have to. This kind of also goes back to the picks and bans conversation in a sense, right? Of like one team that's incredibly prepared and absolute pros and veterans would benefit potentially significantly more from that format change than someone who's a little bit newer or perhaps invests less time, is a bit more casual. So whenever it comes to any of these considerations, that's also something we have to think about of like, is this going to be a change that's beneficial to everyone or to the majority of competitors, or is this only going to benefit, a handful? So, never saying that, one or other is a reason why we would exclusively make that decision, but it's just something we have to weigh into any of these conversations.
Of course. I'm just realizing the time here. I don't want to. I'm sure we could just keep talking esports for like another hour, but then we wouldn't be able to talk events or news or anything. Big. I don't know. Is there any burning questions left that you want to ask, Adrian?
No, I think I'm good. To be honest, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So
Okay.
yeah, I think I'm good for now.
All right. I have to ask this question because Jake would kill me if I didn't ask this one question to you, Adrian. This is the thing that he really wanted to know. What was it like for you moving from being a competitive player, being at that forefront of trying to win the money, trying to win that trophy, to now working at Blizzard and designing all these different events for players? What's that like for you?
I think this is a good question. So I guess point one, I definitely miss it sometimes, right? Like, especially when this event that we've got coming up for Solo Shuffle, a big part of me is like, oh, do we need a spare player? Like, could I come in, hop in, play in it? Like, I love that kind of stuff. And when you see players who have just won and like they have like, that feeling of like all their hard work has paid off. They've got this huge like prize in the community. They're kind of like the envy of all their fellow competitors, right? I definitely miss it a little bit, especially since I wasn't quite able to achieve it from back in my competing days. Came close a couple times, but didn't quite get to that number one spot. But at the same time, I think it gives me very good perspective. I'm fortunate enough to have kind of firstly enjoyed WoW Esports as a fan, as a viewer, and then competitively played in some of the events, then kind of got my foot in the door with the production through the talent perspective, and then finally kind of being fully on the back end of, you know, how we design our products and how we design the broadcasts. And I think one of the things that kind of helps me appreciate is the player perspective, right? Like you have to be able to balance like the player perspective, the viewer perspective, kind of all of these, as well as like the business side of it, from Blizzard's side, right? Like there's a lot of different things. As my lights go out, very nice. If I can get them back on, there we go. There's a lot of different things that you have to consider, and I think because of the not unique, but you know, the way that I've come through the community, being fairly grassroots driven, it gives me a perspective that I'm happy I have when it comes to the way we think about these tournaments. And you know, we've got a kick-ass team here, which is another big reason why it's super fun to work on these. We've got some new people who joined our team this year, and they've been immediately off the ground running with all of these different products. It's been a very, very ambitious year for us in terms of like just doing so many different things. And I couldn't be prouder of the people we've got working on this stuff, as well as the you know, just it's fun to work with them. So there's I miss it sometimes, the competing side of it. It's very fun, but I'm also very happy with you know, what I get to do now for these shows.
Love it. Just out of curiosity, so I know you've had some people leave, you had some people hired. What's the, is there any positions that you still need filled? Just in case anybody listening wants to put their name in the hat.
Yeah, I mean, definitely worth like checking out the Blizzard careers page. There's always openings at the company. We don't have any full-time openings right now on the esports team. We definitely had a few that we worked through earlier in the year. But you know, like we're always kind of, you know, looking for different partners when it comes to community tournaments, when it comes to maybe different roles on the back end of the broadcast. Like we have spots that open periodically, and definitely some of the sources we look at for those sorts of things are like people who are actively involved in the community shows, podcasts, broadcasts, tournaments, all of these sorts of things. So, you know, it's a great way of getting involved. And also for talent as well. Like one of the things we opened up this year a little bit more, we had started to toy with it last year, was also talent roles. We obviously have kind of a fairly set group of amazing casters when it comes to both dungeons and PvP. But we've also been trying to find avenues, working with some of our internal teams, our legal teams and stuff, of like, how can we bring like an extra player on, or, you know, bring this member of the community on, have their perspective on the show. And I'm sure that's something we're going to continue to do going into future years as well. So, you know.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. One last question, top of my head. So Solo Shuffle, we already talked about it. It's coming up in a couple weekends. And then right after that, we have Wrath of the Lich King going live, classic.
I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. Season 4 will be just finished. We'll be rolling out, and we'll be heading into Dragonflight, both the pre-patch and then further into whenever the Dragonflight actually drops. Is Solo Shuffle it? Is that the last? Is that going to be the last of 2022 for esports, or are we going to see anything else before Santa Claus rolls, or sorry, Great Father Winter rolls through Azeroth?
We don't have anything else announced right now, but I can say with confidence that we will have some other stuff before the end of the year. I won't say what that is. Don't want to steal the team's thunder when it comes to those announcements, but you know, Wrath of the Lich King is just around the corner, so you can bet there's going to be some stuff for that.
All right. Damn it. I tried. Eric trained you too well.
Yeah.
All right.
He did.
Big, do you want to ask the famous question we ask every show?
Yeah, so we tend to ask our guests, you know, if you had unlimited resources, unlimited time, and limited everything, what's one thing you'd like to see implemented into the WoW ecosystem?
Ooh,
If you could change one thing, if you could do one big thing, what would it be?
one thing, I'm gonna have to give it a second to think about what I want to answer with this. So one thing I really like, and this is going to be very esports focused. There's a few different tournaments that have had these kind of mass live events and like just tons and tons of people in one place playing the same game. If I had infinite resources, I could do whatever I wanted. I would love to fill a hall, like a BlizzCon hall or even bigger. I have infinite resources now, so I can do whatever I want. Fill as big a space as possible with computers with WoW on them, and then run TGP style tournaments or raid race style tournaments or anything like that in that form. And the reason I think that would be very fun and exciting is because at the same time that creates like a LAN environment, which takes me right back to like my first ever event. The first event I ever went to for esports or gaming was a DreamHack in Stockholm, Sweden. And there was just like rows and rows of people just playing games, and it had a very unique setting to it that I miss a lot, especially in a COVID world. So I think that would be what I would do, and I do think as well, if you had like a tournament realm for solo shuffle or something, you could just have like rows and upon rows of people playing in that. Maybe the top X people at the end of the day make it to the stage where they can play like a round for the top 6 players or whatever it is. But I think something like that would be super, super cool. We'd love to see it.
Very cool. Gerissar, what about you?
I'm gonna be completely greedy. If I had all the money in Blizzard, I would get more of those wicked looking esports bomber jackets that got handed out monogrammed and hand them out to an infinitely larger number of people, myself included.
Yeah,
Those are
I'd
sweet
love
looking
to.
jackets.
They were super cool. I'd love to sell those. That would be something that would be very cool. Well, I have to keep working my way at some of those things, but it would be lovely to, whenever we have something like this, get it on the shop and, give an avenue for folks to be able to get them.
I'm sure if those jackets ended up on the Blizzard store, they would sell like hotcakes. I'm sure of it. Big. What's your thing?
Oh, I mean, I set myself up for this perfectly. I'd create a WoW PvP documentary. That's been something ever since I saw the Smash documentary. I was like, wow, it'd be so cool if we had this for World of Warcraft. Just to tell the storylines, the history of WoW PvP, because it's very complicated. There's a lot of storylines in there that people should probably know about, and I'd love to work on a project like that. That'd be amazing. So if I had all the money in the world, I'd just go around the world interviewing people and making a sweet documentary about WoW PvP. That's what I would do, and I think that'd be really fun. So yeah, that's what I would do with all those resources, and I kind of set myself up for that with the need greed pass, but so be it.
Nice. You'd have to get Choice in on that as well, I think.
Oh yeah, I love Choice. I work with Choice. I don't know if you knew that, but
No.
He's been making some skill cap videos.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yes. He's a good guy. I like Choice.
He is. All right. Well, that's that. I have to. Adrian, it's up to you. You can stick around for the rest of this, or if you want, I'm not sure if you need to get back to work or not. You seem to be in the office all by yourself, or everybody else took a lunch at the time, knowing that you're going to be on camera. One of the two.
No, yeah, the office is relatively empty today. which is a good thing because I chose to do this from here, and I'm sure I would be annoying people otherwise. I'm more than happy to stick around for the closing of the show though.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's talk events then and get this show going.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
Yes, get in there and fight. Upcoming WoW PvP events. Yeah. So typical ones we always have. Dalaran Gaming doing his 5v5 1v1s. He's been all over the place doing these ones. He's been doing them NA. He's been doing EU. He's been doing cross faction. He's been doing them on the PTR now. Like, so if you want to see some wild and fun gameplay, go check him out over on YouTube. We were talking about Flark's tournaments. I had to ask Flark directly. I was asking him what happened because he said he was going to start doing more regular tournaments and then stopped. Well, his so he has a software that he uses to make the teams because it's solo queue, right? So then he takes people's CR and makes balanced teams out of it and all that. But because of the cross faction, had to go back into development for that. So they're on pause. Go figure. But I'll guarantee you that as soon as we know about it, we'll be tweeting about it and raising that one back up. Another fun one. This is on the Twink side, we have a level 20 3v3 PvP arena tournament being hosted by Trial Exploit called Bread and Circuses. So the Trial Exploit community is a Russian tournament. So just as you, so if you go to watch it, just know that it's going to be in Russian. It's going to be happening on the 24th of September. Sorry, Adrian, this is going to be competing with your solo shuffle. Fun part is they have a 90-pound prize pool to the winning team, and they're not allowing any hunters because I guess level 20 hunters are broken. So
I love that rule, by the way. No hunters allowed. That would be my version of World of Warcraft. Never a hunter. Get him out of here.
Coming from the Resto Druid. Really?
Coming from a WoW player. You know, they're such ratty little classes. You know, get out of here, hunters. Scram.
Too funny. Bismex would be disappointed with you. Anyways, so we have there's a bit.ly link that we'll have in the show notes that goes to the Discord that has all the information. And just a warning, yes, the Discord server is in Russian, but they do have some English speaking people there, so you can communicate there if you want to get some more information. Plus also the links to the Twitch or the YouTube or whatever is going to be there. Armed Forces Dungeon Clash was announced for the 14th to the 16th of December. So this is Armed Forces teams only. So there's I think the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force. I want to say a British Army team, and I think maybe the Marines. So if you want, you check that out. Linked on Twitter for that event, and they stream that over on Twitch. Really good event, fun to watch. It is Dungeon Clash though, so it's going to be similar to the MDI or the Great Push. I'm not sure. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I should probably check in. I'm not sure if it's going to be a Great Push, if it's going to be the highest key, if it's going to be a key pushing, or if it's going to be just dungeon racing. The other one, so we did speak of this briefly. Adrian, you let the cat out of the bag before we got to this spot, but there is the solo shuffle that's happening the 23rd to the 25th. So with EU being on the 23rd, NA being on the 24th, and then the 25th being the grand final day. 36 players each region, and it's $100,000 US prize pool. So I'm assuming that's $100,000. That's not just for one player though, is it, Adrian?
Winner takes all. And then no, it's 50k per region, and then that's distributed amongst the players.
Okay. That would be so heartbreaking if it was a winner take all. Like, oh, that would get super cutthroat. Whoa.
Yeah, that would be very ruthless. That would be full on.
Have you guys ever thought about doing that? Like doing like just a one prize only for instead of this distribution?
Definitely thought about it. The thing, especially during COVID when we moved the events to online, we did actually go the opposite direction a little bit of like smoothing out the prize pool because we wanted to make sure that, you know, if this is people were, you know, I think it's fair to say that some people have been having a little bit of a harder time. So we wanted to, you know, make sure you're getting something kind of no matter where you're placing, you're getting something out of it at least. But yeah, I mean, suddenly by the time you get to our finals, the pricing does become a little bit more top heavy again, which goes to, you know, what you want in a competition, right? Like the people who are at the top should get something, but at the same time, like all the people who play have put some effort in, so maybe 100% to 0% is a little extreme for us.
I wouldn't mind getting some compensation for being pinned up against C9 at the first matchup. You know, it's a little harsh.
Sure.
All right. So that's it. All I know for esports so far. Again, throw this up to the community. If you know of anything, let us know so we can let everybody else know. In the meantime, we'll get into the news.
All right. Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
All right. Big, can you start talking about the news?
Yeah, so the Great Push finished on September 4th, and so congrats to Team Echo for winning the first place. This was a great series with a nail-biter finish between Echo and Monka for first place. Ambition was very close as well. That team performance set a world record on Junkyard, which we talked about earlier, with a plus 37 key. So quite impressive. Then there was a charity event that finished on September 10th, and I don't know how to pronounce that word.
Zymox?
Zymox. Okay, so Zymox charity cachet finished on 10th of September. Again, congrats to all the participants, and congrats to the charities as well. Echo Guild raised $60,000 for direct relief, and Liquid Guild raised $40,000 for able gamers.
Mm-hmm. And that was courtesy of Esports, right? Adrian right there, right? So thank you very much for that. Then of course as always, there's the hot fixes that have washed through. Again, most of them are PvE centered. There was some Wrath Classic stuff that has been done, such as the druids. The track humanoids doesn't activate when they're in shape shifting anymore. Rogues, some of their talents got reworked, and some other few things like some latency issues. Players can report character friends, all that stuff, and the zombies were stopped. So although the players couldn't stop the zombies, the devs decided that they've had enough zombies, particularly in Alterac Valley, where it was, it was AV weekend, and I guess it was just absolute mayhem. It was.
Yes, I saw a handful of angry messages directed at some zombie players. You know, that's understandably right. Like pressing that corpse explosion right before the gates open. So yeah, it was a bit frustrating, I guess, for those who are just trying to grind out their honor.
Well, and on top of that, there's also the frustration of the people that were, just trying to farm honor by sitting in towers and not actually participating in the game, and then earning a ban from that. So that was
yeah. AV is a bit tricky, right? Like there's a fine line between AFK and defending, right? In AV, because actually, what I've been doing lately is I defend the very first tower. I'm of the belief that if you defend that very first tower that you can interact with, then you win the game. Like in this version of AV, I know there's a lot of strategies right now going on with AV, but I like that strategy. Just defend the first tower, and you're golden.
I also like the strategy. That's my favorite strategy. It's also guaranteed honor. If you manage to defend that tower, it will die, and you will get honor from it. So.
Yes, and people just pull. People are really quick to pull on that first tower going down. So you just got to get that one, and you're golden. So yeah, there's a very fine line there, though, between that and AFKing, right? Sometimes you will be AFKing when you do that. Sometimes you won't be, right? And so I understand.
I think that the difference though is that if you get reported for being AFK, you have there's a timer that shows up where you have like a limited amount of time to respond and actually be active again, and then it goes away.
It's a minute, I think, when you get reported. I don't know exactly.
Well, anyways, so I think that's about it for hot fixes that are PvP orientated. There was a few other ones, like some bug fixes and stuff like that, but nothing. I don't say anything that's really game breaking that I could tell. But yeah. Anyway, that's it for the hot fixes. As we said, it was AV was bonus weekend. I think on top of the zombie apocalypse was happening in Alterac Valley, my understanding is that there's also a number of players that were having like just massive lag issues just trying to load into the Alterac Valley, where like they DC out and then they'd be stuck in like a DC loop, which if you're on a mega server means that you're sitting in a 4-hour queue again. So that was did you see Big? Did you see this one, or even Adrian, about the classic mega servers and what they decided to start doing here? So
yeah, I saw that, and I really hope they implement cross faction, cross realm queuing. I think that'd be the best solution to this problem. You know, I don't think there's a single player that I've heard of who's complained about cross-realm and cross-faction queuing on live. I mean, maybe there's some arguments out there as to why cross-faction isn't a good idea, but I like it. So, you know, why not, you know, implement it into the classic version of the game, hashtag some changes, right? And that'd be one of those that I definitely would imagine would be really popular. So I think that would be the solution going forward. Because, you know, no one likes queue times, right? No one likes to log in after a hard day's work just to be hit with a 2-hour queue. So the one thing that's preventing me from transferring is simply having access to that player pool, right? So, and I know for a fact I'm not allowed with that. So
no, you're not. No. So correct me if I'm wrong, but before we used to have, you know, battle groups where there's like multiple servers that were all in the same battle group, and you could, you know, those were the people you were queuing into, and you couldn't necessarily queue with, you're queuing with people on your server, but at least, you know, you weren't just queuing against people on your server. But is it everything just on server now because battle groups no longer exist? Is that what's happening? So if you're on a small, like if you're on a fresh server or something like that, if you go to queue 3v3 or 2v2s or even 5v5s, really, are you only queuing with people on the same realm?
yeah, I think you can only queue with people on your realm, but I think you can cross realm queue into everyone else, right? Or am I wrong on that? I don't know how.
I'm pretty
No,
sure
I
in
see
like Battlegrounds you can. In Arenas I'm also pretty sure you can queue into other realms, yeah.
Okay. All right. So in that case, then it's just a matter of finding your teammates then. So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, no. Hopefully, I guess really, hopefully this works out where people, the new realms and people transferring off does what needs to happen, which is open up queue times and let people actually play the game, which I think is a major dissatisfier. I'm sure there's a number of people that wanted to play and couldn't because they heard that one server was the best server and they sat a 4-hour queue and said, screw that. So hopefully this fixes that. But on the flip side, I am also concerned that once the hype wave dies and all these people stop playing Wrath, that the same thing that's going to happen that happened in Burning Crusade Classic happens in Wrath, where now all of a sudden all these servers turn into dead servers, and then people are going to have to still pay to do a server transfer to get off a dead realm onto a lively realm. So that's the downside. We'll see what happens. One other piece, so we did talk about the FK suspensions, but this was just announced today. So apparently in Wrath Classic, they are going to allow for queuing for BGs anywhere. So they're going to implement that part where you go into the PvP tab and you can just queue for BG, similar to what you'd be able to do right now for looking for dungeon and for any battleground queues, which is actually a little bit different, or an interesting take, because for Wrath Classic they said they weren't going to have looking for dungeon enabled. So the fact that they're still doing this for battlegrounds seems a bit of a walk back from that stance of having to form a group and then go to a battle master or find the dungeon entrance, or in this case the battleground entrance. So I don't know. What do you think? What do you think, Big? Are you happy that you can queue anywhere, or do you think that they should have kept to the old school ways of queuing up at the battle master?
It's a quality of life improvement, I think, for sure. Like I don't think it really affects the experience of playing the game in a negative way to have this. So I think it's just all positive. So I like this change for sure.
Yeah. All right. Adrian, are you allowed to give your opinion on this one?
I can give my opinion. I can't give a Blizzard opinion on this
Okay.
because my team doesn't work on it.
No,
I-
what's the Adrian opinion?
My personal opinion is I think one of the things with the looking for dungeon is that like you kind of get a lot of people who would sit in the city, right? And then they'll queue into the dungeon. They don't necessarily go and explore the open world. Whereas the PvP one's like kind of the opposite, right? Of like you had to be in a city to queue a BG or queue an arena. So actually, like with these changes, theoretically, in my mind, like people have to go into the world to go find the dungeons, and people can just happen to be in the world to play BGs or arena. So if that gets more players out of the cities and into the world, then I'm all for it. Plus, what Big said, it's a nice quality of life thing to be able to queue from other places. So in my mind, I figured, it's not going to change the way that the actual dungeon or arena gameplay happens for me. So when I saw it, I was happy. But like I said, I have nothing to do with those decisions. So that's my word and not Blizzard's word.
That'd probably help queue times too, kind of directly
Yeah.
too, right? Like
Quite
that's
possibly.
always good.
Mm-hmm. I guess in that way, and this is again, thank you, chat. It does bring up the fact that now you aren't left with the, do I go out in the world and farm some stuff, or do I sit in a battle master queue in a city? Now you can go for and queue, but I guess also it would actually alleviate some of the stress on the city servers on that, because now you don't have hundreds of people sitting at that one little spot on the city. I'll admit though, it is always, it does make the city feel kind of big and busy when you have tens of or 20s or more of players all, you see these clumps of players trying to do something, right? It's always fun.
One of my favorite things they added in for Classic was the little in-game leaderboards. So you can like click on the little it's not a dashboard, what do you call it? Bulletin board. And see the rankings. And then at the end of the season, because you had to queue from the queue master and people were also looking at those bulletin boards, you would just have hundreds of people on their mounts sitting together, like waiting for that last update a couple of minutes after the hour of like, did they get their titles? I thought that was super cool. So that's like a nice kind of coming together moment for the PvP community.
Yeah. That's it's no different than right now where you log in Tuesday morning right after reset and you see all the people sitting in front of the Great Vault. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. I love seeing all the people together.
Yeah, me too. It reminds you that you're actually in a community with a bunch of other people and not just a bunch of NPCs with the occasional person running past. So, all right. Well, I think that's it for us for news. Shout outs, my always the favoriteest part, where I get to spring this on people and they don't see it coming. Adrian, you first. Do you have any shout outs you'd like to give?
Well, firstly, shout out to you guys. It's been a pleasure as always chatting with you. So thank you very much for inviting me onto your show. It was a great conversation. And it's just also great to relive stuff because, you spend a lot of time in the moment of like the build up and the work, but it's nice to kind of take this overarching view of like, this is all the cool stuff that's happened this year. So I appreciate the conversation. Shout out to, everyone watching, whether you just watching the show, whether you watched different versions of our shows, just played the game. Love to always be a part of this community. Everything, not everything, of course, but a lot of what I've done, especially professionally, is because of this wonderful community. So I'm always super appreciative of that. And yeah, I guess shout out to all the people that work behind the scenes on the shows. Like it's great to talk about the shows themselves, but a lot of hard work from a lot of individuals goes into those. So shout out to all the people who work on them, whether it be people working for Blizzard, people who are contracted, people who are playing in the events, people who are talent. You know, lots of folks, chat mods, everyone who contribute to this, and also the fans who give updates, fan sites, all of these things. So lots of shout outs there. And then final call out, which I would get in trouble if I didn't reiterate one more time, but of course we do have that solo shuffle event coming up, not this weekend, but the weekend after, 23rd to the 25th of September. It's going to be a ton of fun. A lot of your favorite players playing, so make sure to check that out on Twitch and YouTube.
Awesome. And don't forget to go and not harass your favorite player to make sure that they stream it.
Yeah, give them a nudge. Nothing more than a nudge.
Big, do you have any shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, because you name dropped him earlier. Shout out to Choice. Yeah, I was actually working with him earlier this morning. Choice is an interesting person in the community. He's a very funny guy. He makes his own silly YouTube videos. I don't know how you can find him. That's the problem. I think in his words, he creates content that no one is, that he intends for no one to watch. But if you want to watch Choice's videos, it's YouTube choice_AU. Very funny PvP related stuff usually. Some PvE stuff sprinkled in there too. So yeah, check out Choice. Shout out to Choice.
Yeah, his content's gold. I guess I want to do a quick shout out. I'm not sure if this is really a shout out, but just as a note, so there are the Technically PvP t-shirts. If you ever want to, if you go to the Bonus Roll website, there's a Teespring link there. You can buy a t-shirt that has Technically PvP on it, so you can walk around and rep that. But just as a note, on the back of it, it still has the Warcraft radio or the WoW radio symbol on it. So that is actually that's going to be legacy now. Those are going to go away. So if you want to have one that has the old Warcraft radio symbol on the back of it, buy it now, because that's going to go away and it's going to be replaced with the Bonus Roll production. So you gotta, you go there, buy a t-shirt, and of course it helps support Bonus Rolls and us. So all right, Adrian, do you still do things on the internet? Are you still out there? You know, where can people find you, man?
Very occasionally I will tweet something, so that's probably the best source. I do occasionally be like, I should stream today, like I feel like streaming, but very rarely does it actually manifest itself into an actual stream. But yeah, go feel free to check out my Twitter. Is it at Healingstat? I want to say.
I'm pretty sure it's at Healingstat. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's at Healingstat. So every now and then you'll probably see a lot of retweets of the shows that we've got coming up. So it's a good source of that, as is of course the WoW Esports official channels. And then I was at a Lady Gaga concert this past weekend, which was really fun in the evening. So
I
there was
thought it was a Dodgers game you were at.
Yeah, I tried to go to a Dodgers game, but then it turned out that it was Lady Gaga, as I learned afterwards. But you know, such is life sometimes.
I hate it when that happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so occasionally you'll see some stuff from me on there. It's probably the best place to follow me. But yeah.
Actually, and I have to say, you do a great job, because you don't just retweet the WoW Esports, but you do a great job on retweeting all the other orgs and some of the player stuff while events are going on. So you're really good at that. You're better. You're better at it than I am.
we have a lot of. You're listing it out in the earlier segment of this, right? There's always a ton of awesome community stuff going on. So you know, if you're ever looking for World of Warcraft content, you don't have to look very far, right? There's always some cool stuff going on.
Exactly. No, If it's not official, it's unofficial. It's yeah, lots of great stuff. Big. Do you? Oh yeah, actually, thank you, Mortai. Just like Oasis, Oasis does a lot of fun stuff too.
Yeah.
Big. Can you list off where our listeners can reach us?
Sure. You can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Bonus Roll Productions Discord. Also, you can visit the Bonus Roll website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at bonusroll.gg. This new directory also has a review system, so head over there and tell everyone what you think of your favorite shows.
Hint, hint. Give us a 5-star. Anyways, links, like always, are going to be in the show notes when I post this probably tomorrow night. And in the meantime, I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.
See ya.